Who's the Superman little boy that goes out and does all the pictures?
I think you're thinking of Peter Parker in Spider-Man.
No.
It's Superman's little sidekick.
What's his name? What's his name?
Oh my God! Hold on. Jimmy Olsen.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked out.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you even remember what Blockbuster Video was? If you answered yes, and this is the podcast for you, I am one of your 3 hosts, Roger Roper, and alongside me are my 2 co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Jean Jennifer Lyons.
Never rub another man's rhubarb.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. Each week the audience selects from 4 movie choices that we then break out our VHS race car tape rewinders and watch the movie that tallied the highest number of votes. At the end of each podcast, the 3 of us will provide you, the audience, with the number of each wipes this movie would need to take off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave a 5-star review if you feel so inclined on iTunes. That really helps the podcast grow. You can also vote for upcoming movies on our website, shatthemovies.com, and email in your suggestions at hosts@shatthemovies.com. Big D, this week's movie choices were 1980s and 90s superhero movies. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. This was 80s and 90s superheroes. I thought there's no way we could go wrong. This is going to be a great week. Great movies. We had The Rocketeer, Superman 2. We had Blade, Batman, the original one from 89 with Michael Keaton. And boy, was I wrong. We got a turd.
So listen, I was excited about watching Batman, as I think all of us were, compared to all the other movies, The Rocketeer, Superman 2, which is atrocious, and Blade, which would have been okay. I think, Gene, you were voting for Blade. Is that right?
Absolutely. Any vampire movie I'm going to go for, and Blade is actually really good, but it's not really fair. I mean, Blade was in 98. That's a lot later than all the other ones came out. I will say that we've done this show, many times before, and we always knew that there was a sort of, a risk involved in doing it. That risk really, really became a reality for me this week because we watched the movie and it took a movie that I thought was amazing and completely ruined it. Now, we've had Willow and shit like that before where I didn't really know what to think of it, or I had a hunch that it wasn't going to be good. Batman, I had no doubt that this was going to be an absolute winner, and it bombed.
So Gene and I spent this past weekend at Phoenix Comic-Con. We went to a panel debating superhero movies, which is better, Marvel versus DC. In fact, on the program, Gene, it said that they were going to set up 2 teams and we're the audience are going to decide, right? We were like, yes, we can't wait. That panel was absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, with the exception of Brian Augustin, who is trying very hard to keep this thing together. It was terrible. And, one of the things was interesting, though, is that there was this consensus that Jack Nicholson was not a terrible Joker. And I've had this conversation with people before who, we talked about Heath Ledger being a great Joker. They did not like Heath Ledger on the panel. But one of the interesting things is people always say Heath Ledger, man, he was so great. And then right after that, people will say, well, Jack Nicholson was also a great Joker. And I've always agreed, thinking that I remembered him being scary yet funny and really embodying the perfect Joker. He's awful.
I really think this is a case of collective amnesia. I have not found a single person in discussing this movie that doesn't think it is iconic. And yes, this did turn the corner for superhero movies into the mainstream and did change the way they were portrayed on screen. But I don't think this was the same movie I saw when I was a wee teenager.
This movie was longer than I remember. I think that was the biggest problem I had. I think it comes right in under 2 hours and 20 minutes.
It's definitely a problem. I wouldn't say it's the biggest problem with this movie. I've got much, much bigger problems with this movie than timing.
And listen, when we do movies that are truly loved, usually universally, like Blade Runner has a very fanatical fan base. They were upset with us because we really didn't like Blade Runner and tore it apart. This one, don't turn us off now. Don't discount us right off the bat by thinking we're just Batman haters. Pause the podcast and go watch it. Then come back and you will agree with us.
Yeah, I want to point out that I'm a diehard DC fan. I'm looking on my shelf right now next to me, the bookshelf in my office, and there are no less than 20 Batman titles on the shelf right now. I love Batman. I do not love this movie.
Well, Batman is a 1989 action-adventure American superhero film directed by Tim Burton and produced by John Peters. It's based on the DC Comics character of the same name and is the first installment of Warner Brothers' initial Batman film series. The film takes place in Gotham City, where crime boss Carl Grissom, played by Jack Palance, effectively runs the town, but there's a new crime fighter in town, Batman, played by Michael Keaton. Grissom's right-hand man is Jack Napier, played by Jack Nicholson, a brutal man who is not entirely sane. After a falling out between the two, Grissom has Napier set up with the police, and Napier falls to his apparent death in a vat of chemicals. However, he soon reappears as the Joker and starts a reign of terror in Gotham City.
So you mentioned this was a big turning point for superhero movies. I think also, even before the movie came out, there was all the promotional tie-ins, the cross promotions with toys, shirts, fast food, even the terrible, terrible Bat Dance video on MTV, which I know Gene loves because he loves everything Prince. But I don't remember actually seeing the movie the first time. I just remember the hype and just this manic drive to see it. So I think this was also the first event film that I ever remember seeing people lining up for or wanting to line up for, other than Star Wars. And Star Wars didn't have as big a tie-in as this movie.
I agree with that assessment, and I'm glad you brought it up, Big D, because I was trying to remember why it was that it was my first midnight showing, and I was there at 9 years old. I don't really do midnight showings as an adult even. I was 9 years old. I remember the entire theater erupted just when the Batman logo came into focus in the opening credits. People lost their minds. I have, to this day, have never been so excited for a movie to start, and we hadn't even seen a single minute of footage.
I remember spending also countless hours on my Game Boy playing the Batman Game Boy game, which was, terrible 8-bit black and white. I think my eyesight is terrible as a result of playing that game for hours. But Batman was everywhere in 1989. You couldn't go anywhere without someone wearing a Batman shirt or having a Batman lunchbox or anything like that.
And Big D, you mentioned the Prince video for Bat Dance, which is a phenomenal video and a phenomenal song. But here's the thing. Prince did Bat Dance, he did Party Man, he did Trust. I mean, he did this whole soundtrack. He is throughout it. And arguably the best part of this movie is Prince. Prince doesn't do that for every movie. This is a special movie on that merit alone, and that's pretty much as good as it gets.
But wasn't there also like the big outrage for the casting of Michael Keaton? This was pre-internet, so there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there was no Reddit, there was no 4chan, there was nowhere to go to express your dismay for casting other than talking to your friends. And people were very upset that Michael Keaton was Batman because they said he was too short, he was a comedian, he couldn't pull off someone as dark as this. And now looking back, I think Michael Keaton does a really good job here, but you can really tell he's way too short to be playing Batman. Michael Keaton's like, what, 5'10"?
I can't understand why anybody would doubt that Mr. Mom could pull off the Cape Crusader. Every Batman has had the same problem. Every supervillain has had the same problem. No one is ever happy until they actually see the portrayal on screen. So this was nothing new. You can't keep the fanboy happy. I don't think he's the best Bruce Wayne, and we'll get into it, but it's not as good as everybody remembers.
Well, this movie was a hit at the box office. It's number 52 on the top films of all time for the adjusted box office. If you were to take in today's dollars, this movie made $500 million. Now, it was huge.
I agree. The movie was huge. A huge disappointment, yes.
With that being said, Big D, play the trailer.
Vicki Vale.
Bruce Wayne.
And what do you do for a living?
there a 6-foot bat in Gotham City?
Nice outfit. I have given a name to my pain.
What are you?
I'm Batman. Get those wonderful toys. My life is really complex. Winged freak terrorizes. Wait till they get a load of me.
As Gotham City approaches its bicentennial, Mayor Borg orders District Attorney Harvey Dent and Police Commissioner James Gordon to make the city safer. Meanwhile, reporter Alexander Knox and photojournalist Vicki Vale begin to investigate rumors of a vigilante named Batman who is targeting the city's criminals. Batman's alter ego is Bruce Wayne, a billionaire industrialist who, as a child, witnessed his parents' murder at the hands of a psychotic mugger. At a fundraiser for the bicentennial in Wayne Manor, Bruce meets and falls for Vale, and the two begin a romantic relationship. However, the evening is cut short as Bruce is alerted to Commissioner Gordon's sudden departure due to police business and leaves to investigate as Batman.
So the only Batman we had ever really seen on screen was the campy television show from the 1960s, the happy-go-lucky, the wham, bam. Then in the 1980s, Frank Miller comes out with the entire Dark Knight collection. And that gave a different avenue for them to take. And Tim Burton, I love him. I love his stuff. Edward Scissorhands is probably one of my favorite movies. And I want to show respect. He did something that I'm sure at the time people were telling him, you can't go that dark. But now looking at it, all I saw was a lot of smoke, some really bad matte paintings. I didn't find any of the criminals that surrounded the Joker or throughout Gotham to be believable. They were almost as campy as the show.
I agree with you, Big D. When the opening scene comes on, I was like so excited about the fact that you've got, it almost looks like half animation. It's all an illusion. It's that magical world that Tim Burton creates. And I was really excited about that, but it fell apart very rapidly. And the first thing that we see is the opening crime, which is meant to mirror the killing of Batman's parents. I thought we were going to watch that. I'd forgotten that this is actually a different, mugging that's happening. But I had a problem there with the crimes and the criminals that are depicted in this are all unimaginative. In modern superhero movies, you've got a grand scheme. Criminals look intimidating. There's a smart plan of some sort going on. These first two hoodlums, they look silly. They're just like two white dudes. They look like, community theater actors. And they're just mugging people and then cracking jokes about their credit cards and stuff. It didn't feel believable. And it was the first sour note in what ended up being an entire orchestra of crap.
Well, didn't they, right away make it a commercial for American Express? I was like, oh, there's a product placement 30 seconds into the movie. American Express, never leave home without it. This was also an era where people carried cash in their wallets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and immediately after that, you see Batman swoop in and attack them. And I forgot how he attacked in this movie. His go-to move is stand on something tall with lighting, raise your arms up so they can see your wings, and then slowly float toward them. He's very showy. He makes himself a huge target, which is tactically idiotic. And he spends way too long being exposed in the light and in open spaces. This is not the Batman that we saw in The Dark Knight.
No, you're forgetting his go-to move, which is the crane kick from Karate Kid. He will stand with the cape over his shoulders. He baits the criminal in, and then he just straight kicks him in the face, and they'll fly through the wall, a door, onto the ground. But I heard a long time ago, and it kind of stuck with me, that it's not how you play Batman, that almost anybody can play Batman. You put the cowl on him. It's really easier to do than playing Bruce Wayne. And that's my biggest problem with Michael Keaton. My Batman should not be wearing acid-wash jeans, have almost a mullet and a black tank top. He was less playboy than he was nerd recluse. He falls in love after a one-night stand. How is this a billionaire socialite playboy?
Yeah, I called him more like Bat Dad. You see him in the Batcave, and he's got that frizzy hair. He's wearing the glasses. He's got a turtleneck on. Like, he looks like the Dork Knight. I'm not buying this at all. He can't play the Playboy. And honestly, like you said, he's got this bookishness to him that is not the billionaire Playboy that we've come to know and love. It doesn't show that strength, that confidence, that aggression that you would expect to see from Batman.
Okay, listen, this is the most identifiable Batman, or Bruce Wayne, rather, that I can identify with, right? I'm not a George Clooney. I'm not a Christian Bale. I'm not I'm certainly not a Ben Affleck. I think I'm most related to Michael Keaton's portrayal of Bruce Wayne. I thought was like, hey, here's a guy who's, he's kind of aloof. He's, he doesn't really know what's really going on and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing that I do have to say is, you guys may not like his Bruce Wayne, but his Batman voice, of all the Batmans, with the exception of Ben Affleck, who had a voice modulator, I think his Batman voice was spot on. It wasn't the "swear to me, Rachel."
Yeah, see, I take the Christian Bale Batman voice over this any day. That's the way I've always imagined Batman talking when I would read the comic books as a kid. So Michael Keaton it's not a bad Batman, but his Bruce Wayne is awful.
I felt like I was watching Michael Fassbender doing Steve Jobs as Bruce Wayne.
What?
It was awful. Have you seen Steve Jobs?
Yeah.
Okay.
I prefer the Ashton Kutcher Jobs over Michael Fassbender's.
No, when he takes out those thin wireframe glasses and he's sitting there with Alfred, this is Steve Jobs. It's bad. Bad.
There were people who I forgot were in this movie. Harvey Dent, played by Billy D. Williams, not Tommy Lee Jones. Also, Jack Palance is the head honcho. And, of course, Arliss, played by Robert Wool, is the journalist. And he plays a major role in this movie.
Yeah, there were a lot of stars in this movie that I had forgotten were in there. Just one little note on the journalism thing. I took this very personally, that everybody in this movie is a dick to journalists. There is such a hostile depiction of them being parasites, of everybody shitting on them, and even of them being kind of these shitty people. I just want to point out that journalists are among the most ethical human beings in the world, and I'm not just saying that because I was a copy editor for 13 years.
Sorry, I have a great idea. If you're a journalist in Gotham, you should know who Bruce Wayne is and what he looks like. Maybe that's why people were getting on them, because they were hacks.
Did you feel like this was a little bit like Superman with all the journalistic focus? Like the Vicki Vale was the who's the Superman little boy that goes out and does all the pictures?
I think you're thinking of Peter Parker in Spider-Man.
No.
It's Superman's little sidekick.
Yeah,
what the hell
what's
is his name?
What's his name?
Oh my God! Hold on. Jimmy Olsen.
Jimmy Olsen. I felt like Vicki Vale was playing Jimmy Olsen. I felt like Robert Wool was playing who's his girlfriend? Who's Superman's girlfriend?
Lois Lane.
I felt I was like, why are they focusing so much on? It came at the cost of developing characters like Harvey Dent, who's a much more interesting character. It also came at the expense of James Gordon, right? Which, if you were trying to stay true to the comic, like in this depiction, James Gordon is either a side character, and was he dirty? He felt dirty to me.
No, listen, if your problem is Gordon, they throw out the entire history and origin story of almost every single character in this movie. From Batman, he doesn't have a problem killing. He actually goes out and seeks murder. He tries to kill people. You have the backstory of the Joker changing. So we shouldn't just focus on Dent or Commissioner Gordon. Treat this almost as if it's an original material, because there is the source material is just a basic blueprint. They don't follow any of the rules.
Well, mob boss Carl Grissom discovers his mistress Alicia is involved with his second-in-command Jack Napier. With the help of corrupt police lieutenant Max Eckhart, Grissom sets Napier up to be killed in a raid at Axis Chemicals. However, Grissom's plan is foiled with the arrival of Commissioner Gordon, who wants Napier captured alive. In the ensuing shootout, Napier, who has realized he was set up, kills Eckhart, but Batman suddenly appears, and in a struggle, Napier is knocked into a vat of chemicals. Batman escapes and Napier is presumed dead. As Batman returns to his life as Bruce Wayne, Napier is revealed to have survived the accident, but left horribly disfigured with chalk-white skin, emerald green hair, and a ruby-red grin. Already sociopathic, Napier is driven completely insane by the incident and calls himself the Joker. He kills Grissom and takes over his criminal empire.
So as I'm watching this, and I'm watching Nicholson's Joker, I just could not get over the similarities to Cesar Romero's portrayal of the Joker in the 70s TV series. It was an unoriginal portrayal of the Joker, and I don't know why we forgot. This is just a carbon copy of what was done previously. I would have rather seen Jack Palance, who was a badass in City Slickers, Tango and Cash, Young Guns. He would have made a better Joker, I think, than Jack Nicholson.
You know, one of the things is you never know what kind of direction the actors got. And so it might have been one of those things where, much like we saw Nicolas Cage kind of quarantined and controlled in Raising Arizona, the director here might have, Tim Burton might have said, hey, Jack, I want you to do Cesar Romero, basically, without the mustache, obviously. But yeah, he was a fatter, older Cesar Romero. I did not appreciate it. There were some moments, I think, where he had a little bit of something, a little bit of sizzle, but that scene where they're breaking into the museum and he's doing the 1 foot hop and then knocks the statue off, and it was painful to watch him even trying to do that physical comedy.
Listen, I'm going to have to disagree with you on this. I think Jack Nicholson, yes, at moments did seem, I felt like I had the exact same thought that he's doing a Cesar Romero portrayal. However, there are moments when he's Jack Napier, I immediately thought back to Jack Nicholson's portrayal in The Departed.
But the problem is, they've changed his entire origin story. We don't know how almost drowning in the chemicals caused this, but obviously it changed his entire motivation. The Joker we know is driven by chaos, by wanting to actually just destroy. He wants to watch the world burn. This Joker is actually driven by his dick. He is driven by Vicki Vale. He's not driven to cause chaos, and he spends half his time. If I'm his henchman, I'm going to be like, dude, why are we going and bringing flowers to Vicki Vale? Shouldn't we be causing chaos? It wasn't scary.
I think he's driven more than just this penis, right? He was double-crossed by his boss, and he thinks he can do a better job, so he's going to overtake him.
So he's double-crossed by his boss over a woman that he was cheating with. Mm-hmm. Then he goes after Vicki Vale, and he's clearly not in for the money because he's just throwing money out to people to kill him. So it's not a financial gain. He's just, it's not really clear what the hell he's after other than pussy.
Almost every set piece revolves around Vicki. Going to the apartment to try to hit on her. The museum dance-off. Also, the secondary dance at the top of the cathedral. Vicki is at the center of all of it. It's not chaos, it's love.
Speaking of Vicki, I do think that this character is ahead of her time. She was beautifully depicted, very stylish. Her fashion, her attitude, it brought like a much-needed cool to this movie. Everybody in this movie is a dork except for Vicki Vale. I agree that sleeping with Bruce on the first date was a bit unbecoming, but she's an empowered woman, and she reveals a vulnerability about that later, where she's like, shit, I slept with you. That was kind of goofy, but if you look at it, like she takes control in a lot of these situations. She's brave. I think she's a great character, and really the only thing I love about her. And again, that the glasses, the hat, everything is on point. She looks great.
So I want to ask you this, Gene, because I had this conversation with Roger before we started recording. And I could be way off base, so you just talked about Vicki. Did Bruce date rape Vicki? It was a bit rushed there. They're drinking. She comments on the stairs, I'm so drunk, I need help. He carries her up the stairs, and I was expecting him to wake up on the sofa alone, but he had sex with a woman who could not consent.
Yeah, so the law speaks to informed consent, right? So basically, you have to be in a position where you can say yes and have your facilities about you, right? And so your facilities, you have your faculties about you. So in essence, if somebody is, say, mentally retarded below a certain IQ or drunk or high, like you cannot legally have sex with them. Even if they say yes, they are not allowed to give consent at that point. And this is a big deal to me. And yeah, I think that this essentially was, even though she's okay with it, it essentially could have been called a rape.
So you're saying Batman runs this trick all the time, where he invites photojournalists over, gets them drunk in the kitchen with Alfred, telling stories of when he was a boy, and then takes them upstairs to his Batmanor, puts on the old bat condom, does the hibbity dibbity, and then hangs on his little bat swing. Is that his game? Is that the what Bruce Wayne is running here?
It's been a couple months since we had a good Raj, so you're saying moment. No, what we're saying is that he fell for her, but probably should have waited until she wasn't drunk to have sex with her.
Listen, I think you guys are reading this the entirely wrong way. But the one thing I am glad about that they didn't do, because this is before the animated series took off and was a hit, is they didn't make Alicia into Harley Quinn.
Honestly, she was kind of an expendable character that was just really there as a way to show again his proclivities and also to show why the Joker and Grissom had a falling out.
Well, the Joker begins to terrorize Gotham City by lacing hygiene products with Smilex, a deadly chemical which causes victims to die laughing with the same maniacal grin as the Joker. Whilst searching for information on Batman, Joker also falls for Vicki Vale. He lures her to the Gotham Museum of Art, but Batman arrives and rescues her. They escape in the Batmobile, but are pursued by the Joker's men, whom Batman manages to defeat. Batman takes Vicki to the Batcave, where he gives her information from his research on Smilex that will allow the city's residents to protect themselves from the toxin. Furious, the Joker vows to kill Batman.
So, this section of the movie, we get to see something pretty awesome, actually. The Batmobile chase scene, again, like we talked about Beverly Hills Cop, this is a classic 80s car chase. We got lots of stunt driving. This is not CGI. You got crashes. There's one scene at an intersection where there's like cars, trucks, everything's crashing. There's like cabbage rolling around. And the Batmobile looks pretty badass. Not my favorite Batmobile. I still favor the original Batmobile, the 60s and 70s Batmobile. But
what?
This is
What?
Oh yeah, dude, that Batmobile's badass.
Come on. It's so campy. The original one? Are you kidding me?
It looks like sex on wheels, dude.
No, the Tumbler's the best.
Yeah, the Tumbler's by far the best.
So here's my question about the Joker and his henchmen. There's a scene here where the Joker commits murder on the steps of City Hall. Half of his men are pretending to be mimes, and they're pretty convincing. So that led me to the one thought. Did the Joker train his henchmen to become mimes, or did he go out and find mimes and teach them to become henchmen?
Well, I think in order to be, look, nobody's going to work for the Joker if they have any sort of sense whatsoever. I mean, the guy is highly unstable. He kills his own people. He has them dress up in idiotic outfits, which I think is an homage to Prince, right? Like during the Party Man scene, you got these unique, unexplained outfits. One guy's like a priest, everybody's in purple jackets. It just looks like a big Prince music video. I think that he went more for people with eccentricity than actual fighting ability.
The thing that no matter what you dress them in or whatever role they're playing, it could be a street mime or a street priest. The thing that we should be most scared about is their proclivity with guns. They're shooting down politicians, former gang leaders, people in the crowd. But it's shot in like a 1970s police drama cop movie where there's no tension, there's no buildup. If you watch The Dark Knight, when Heath Ledger's Joker and his henchmen are shooting the tumbler from the semi-truck, you feel tension. You feel like this is a real thing. You feel like, oh my God, Batman could die here. This is crazy. I felt none of that during these scenes.
It goes back to the problem that the Joker is focusing training his men on how to cut out collages and make dream boards and be mimes instead of teaching them to shoot. All his henchmen have Tommy guns, so I don't know if these were left over from the Untouchables, but their kill to death ratio is probably like 0.2.
Which is good because Batman can't actually turn his head at all. Like his neck is just fused to his body. So it's a good thing that he doesn't really have much to go up against. I kept thinking if he had to deal with anybody with even a modicum of combat capability, he is screwed.
Well, the other thing is okay, there are scenes where I believe that Jack Nicholson's Joker appears very scary. You think that, oh my God, we don't know where he's fucking coming from. Then he pulls out things like a hand buzzer and smell my flower. Oh, it's acid or Smilex. Who's finding this shit scary, funny, or anything?
Well, I'll tell you who isn't finding any of this funny. When we're looking at the collage, the dream board, as Big D mentioned, you see people who have died from a nerve agent, and there's a photo of a guy who I paused the movie. I said, "Holy shit, it's Bill Paxton! It's our old friend Bill Paxton." No, That is actually not Bill Paxton. There are threads on the internet about this, though. Like, literally, I'm not alone in this. Hundreds of people thought this was Bill Paxton, but they did a side-by-side comparison of this photo and an actual photo of Bill Paxton that happened to also be a black and white photo in a similar pose. Turns out, not Bill Paxton, just some guy.
Is the toxic chemical that he fell into, is that Smilex, or did he create this?
No, you see in his file, Batman pulls his file, Alfred gives him the file, and he looks at it, and he says that he's got that Jack Napier has a talent for chemistry. So he's actually developed it himself. And it's very smart the way he do it. I actually like this part of the movie. They're very smart in the way that they said it's not just a chemical that is put on one particular product. It's products that interact with each other. So it's hard to trace. So if you're looking for just one thing, it doesn't seem like a toxin. You got to put them together. So I thought it was pretty cool. What I don't understand is why they die and then suddenly they've got like clown makeup on. Like that makes no sense at all.
Bruce visits Vicki Vale at her apartment, prepared to tell her about his alter ego, but the Joker interrupts their meeting, asking Bruce, "Have you ever danced with the devil by the pale moonlight?" before shooting him. Bruce, however, survives and escapes as he uses a bended serving tray as body armor. He remembers that the mugger also killed his parents, asks the same question, and realizes that Napier was his parents' killer. Vicki suddenly appears in the Batcave, having been let in by Bruce's butler, Alfred Pennyworth. After telling her that the Joker is terrorizing Gotham, he cannot focus on their relationship. Bruce departs as Batman to destroy the Axis plant. Meanwhile, the Joker lures the citizens of Gotham to a parade with the promise of free money, but while throwing cash at the crowd as promised, he also attacks them with the Smilex gas released from his giant parade balloons. Batman arrives and saves them using the Batwing. Furious, the Joker kills his right-hand man, then shoots the Batwing using a long-barreled gun, causing it to crash.
Okay, so my first problem here is the bent tray trick that you mentioned, right? So Bruce Wayne goes and he's want to get crazy? I'll get crazy. Grabs the poker and he anticipates being shot by the Joker. And he doesn't have his regular body armor on, so he puts a tray on underneath. Now, first of all, a lot of people might say, how the hell did the tray stop a bullet? It must be one hell of a tray. Well, now, if you notice, the Joker has a very small caliber revolver, so it's reasonable to think that maybe the tray would have stopped it. What I don't understand is this is Jack Napier, a guy who was killed many times before. I've never killed anyone, and I would notice if I shot somebody in the chest and they didn't bleed, I would think something was very wrong. Also, why wouldn't you shoot him in the face? How did Batman know he wasn't going to get shot in the face? None of this makes sense. It was a terrible bit of writing.
This was a terrible bit of writing. The entire Vicki Vale plot is awful. Batman falls in love after a one-night stand. Alfred, the loyal butler, just completely outs Batman later in this scene and lets Vicki into the Batcave. Batman is debating whether or not giving up his secret identity after one date. This is a joke. If you had cut Vicki Vale's entire plotline out of the movie, you do away with the love triangle. You focus on Jack's origin story, on why Batman is actually fighting crime. The movie would have been 10 times better. I didn't need the rom-com Vicki Vale tropes.
And speaking of that relationship between Batman and Jack Napier here, Batman is, in case you didn't know, he's supposed to be the world's greatest detective, right? That was his whole thing in Detective Comics, DC, right? Was Batman is the world's greatest detective. He, in this movie, is the world's worst detective. He needs things to hit him right in the face before he gets it. He's supposed to be the smartest guy in the Justice League, possibly the smartest guy in the world, but it takes him an entire day to realize that Jack Napier is the guy who killed his parents after hearing the quote. And also, Jack Napier lives in the same fucking city. Like, wouldn't he have been searching for this guy his whole life? If it's his parents' killer, it's his prime motivator, and he doesn't notice that, shit, wouldn't you start looking at maybe crime bosses first?
Are you telling me this is the 1989 version of Martha?
Martha, why'd you say that name?
Why did you say that name?
That was my favorite joke at Comic-Con.
Well, I think the reason why Bruce couldn't figure out that Jack was the one who killed his parents, because the catchphrase that he says, he tells all of his victims, he doesn't. He doesn't say it to Eckhart. He doesn't say it to Grissom. He doesn't say it to the hand buzzer kebab that he cooks at the crime boss meeting.
You know who I say it to? All my Tinder swipe rights. That's my opening line. Have you ever danced with the devil by the pale moonlight? If they send back Martha, then I know we're a match.
He also makes excellent use of his hand buzzer.
So here's my biggest problem with this portrayal of Batman. Every other Batman does what he can to protect human life. Even if you're a criminal, he does not openly attempt to kill you. This Batman, his body count is got to be up there with John Wick. He kills probably 120 people. I tried to start writing him down, and there was just too many. Batman, it's questionable whether he intentionally let Jack go in the beginning. He kind of gives him that wink, like, yeah, I'm going to let you go and let him fall. But later on, he's got Gatling guns on the Batmobile, just shooting them on the street, doesn't matter. The Batwing, which absolutely sucks. It's got a targeting computer, much like, in A New Hope and Star Wars. Except he has got it locked on to Jack, the Joker, standing in the middle of the street. He shoots 4 missiles and probably about 5,000 rounds and can't hit him. But he's got no problem blowing up Axis chemicals and killing maybe 20 henchmen.
Remember all like the social media fervor and all the BuzzFeed articles about, well, Batman and Batman versus Superman, the Batfleck, he's too violent for Batman. Batman has never been portrayed as killing people. Fuck that. They've never watched it. I mean, how soon we forget in 1989, like you said, he's killing everyone in this movie. He's throwing people off buildings, down the staircases. People are dying left and right, and I'm okay with it. Batman's a badass.
There is one book that has precedent for this, though, in Batman Year 2, which is also Frank Miller, and is the worst comic book ever written. He also uses a handgun in that.
Can we talk about the Joker's telescopic gun and how that would miraculously shoot down the Batwing, which you would assume has some sort of bat armor attached to it?
Right. I mean, you're looking at his own body armor. It can withstand bullets. This does not seem to be a particularly special gun other than a really, really long barrel, which would actually slow the bullet as it left. So I don't understand what the hell the point of this, unless the rifling on this gun made the bullet spin so viciously that it was like a flying drill. I don't know what the hell was going on here.
No, you couldn't add the extra armor because you had to put the bolt cutters in the front of the Batwing in case one day you had to fly and actually grab and cut some form of wire or rope. There was no room for extra armament or extra protection.
Also, final thought on this parade scene. One is the Joker's out there in the open. Why the hell don't they just arrest him? I mean, he's right there. And two, why does Batman, knowing that there's gas being shot around, he flies around for like a good hour, goes up to the moon, like does a little, bat symbol. What? He's like so showy. He's like, get to the point, man.
Can we also talk about how Robert Wool is not affected by Smilex by just using like a CVS 99-cent disposable gas mask that he pulls out of his trunk? And why is he just beating pedestrians with his wooden bat as well? That makes no sense.
Well, he was trying to get them off the guide wires. But Vicki was in that like 82 Dodge, whatever the hell that was. There's no way that's keeping out nerve gas.
Yeah, kind of like cars aren't airproof, right? Everyone should be dead in Gotham right now. This is essentially the same plot as Batman Begins with the Scarecrow's Scarex or whatever he puts in the water, right? It's not an airborne pathogen, it's a water pathogen in Christopher Nolan's masterpiece.
Yeah, but at least we got our second Prince song in the movie, right?
Absolutely.
And the best.
Yeah, that's the best. The Parade Prince song. It's Trust, right? And I gotta hear you about trust.
Yeah, it's a fucking phenomenal track.
Well, the Joker kidnaps Vicki and takes her to the top of a cathedral. Batman, who survived the Batwing crash, fends off the Joker's remaining men despite his injuries and then confronts the Joker. The two men struggle, with the Joker eventually gaining the upper hand, leaving Batman and Vicki clinging onto an outcropping. The Joker tries to escape by helicopter, but Batman attaches a heavy granite gargoyle to the Joker's leg with his grappling hook, causing him to lose his grip, and Joker falls to his death.
So we talked about how the story isn't true to Batman Origins and how it doesn't really follow along with any of the book stories or really anything about Batman that we know. A big one here is after this crash. So he crashes the Batwing. And now Batman's key thing is that he's a master tactician, right? Aside from being an expert at martial arts and having gadgets galore, he's an expert tactician. He always has the upper hand because he plans it that way. That's how he can stand up against Superman and stuff like that. So here we got Batman. He crashes, he gets out, he knows he's injured, and yet he still goes into a fight, which is mistake number one. Two, he runs into like pews. He looks like a drunk in like a cumbersome suit. And then he takes the stairs to get up to the top. Like, he's on the stairs for like a good 15 minutes. I don't understand that.
Oh, he might have gotten a concussion. That was a pretty bad crash. But Batman is not himself. And I love watching him try to look up the stairs, but since his head, he cannot articulate his neck, he has to lean back and stare up. He's just lucky he didn't get killed by that falling bell. He's just lucky that he didn't get killed by Blade. I don't know how the hell Blade got up to the top of the cathedral before Jack, Vicki, and Batman, and the bell fell. But Blade kicks the living shit out of Batman. Only way that Batman survives is that typical trope where, oh, I throw you over the edge. I then look over the edge and I pull you over. They use it back to back in less than 2 minutes.
Yeah, the only thing good about this scene, again, I got to get back to Vicki Vale. She looks great in every shot. And there's that scene where she's trying to distract the Joker with her sexuality. And I got sort of jealous of it, man. I mean, she was really turning it on there. The hair, the way she's like glowing. I don't understand why she was ragdolling during the dance sequence. Didn't really care.
Dance sequence. Why the hell is there a dance sequence? Batman is in a life and death struggle. All the Joker has to do is walk over. He's preoccupied. Shoot him in the face with some acid, put a bullet in his head, pull out your telescoping gun that shoots down a Batwing, shoot him in the face. But no, the Joker wants to have a nice, slow dance with Vicki Vale.
Guys, you're missing one huge thing about this entire scene is that Vicki Vale tempts the Joker with a blowjob to distract him from the fact that Batman's standing right behind him. How is this movie made for kids?
Oh, I didn't glance over it. I thought that's what I was going with, the word sizzle. I was trying to code it for family listeners at home.
She drops to her knees, and he does the Jack Nicholson straight out of The Departed look of like, well, do I sprinkle some Coke on this? Like, what's going on here? But yeah, I don't. How does the Joker get the upper hand here?
You don't remember what he says?
No, what does he say?
He says, "You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?"
Oh yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the Joker's death, right? This movie came out in 89. Tim Burton is supposed to be the master of special effects and setting the mood. Joker's death scene looked terrible. The way he fell off the building. We did Die Hard, and that was a year earlier. The way Alan Rickman falls off of Nakatomi, that was awesome. The Joker, did they just run out of money or did they not care? Why couldn't we see the Joker fall like Hans Gruber?
I mean, yeah, anybody who's going to be apologetic for any of the effects in this movie has to remember that Aliens came out 3 years before this and looked so much better than this. So you can't make the excuse that it was 1989. 1989 was plenty of time to have a decent falling from a building effect.
Fuck that. Alfred Hitchcock, who pioneered falling, Big D. Remember the Alfred Hitchcock exhibit where they actually showed, like, they would pull out an audience member to be part of that, where they would move the camera upwards? That was developed by Alfred Hitchcock. That looked better. 1960s movies, black and white, looked better than the falling sequence here of the Joker.
No, going to Alfred Hitchcock at Universal Studios was not on my to-do list.
Well, if they made a Batman exhibit, it probably would have been even worse. Well, Commissioner Gordon announces that the police have arrested the Joker's men and unveils the bat signal. Harvey Dent reads a note from Batman promising that he will defend Gotham whenever crime strikes again. Vicki is taken to Wayne Manor by Alfred, who tells her that Bruce will be a little bit late. She responds by claiming that she is not a bit surprised as Batman looks at the signal's projection, standing watch over the city. End movie.
I was surprised that a couple things happened once crime was gone from the movie. Like, I thought that there was a darkness over Gotham that was just Gotham's character. Nope, turns out that once crime was gone from Gotham, all the poor people also disappear, and so does the trash. It's suddenly all cleaned up, which leads me to ask, well, why is Gotham worth saving? That is one part of the movie that is completely left out. The only thing people care about in this city, apparently, is free cash. Nobody cares about Batman. Nobody cares about the festival, except for the mayor, apparently. They did a horrible job of showing us why anybody should give a shit about Gotham.
I don't think that Batman should, or the politician should, or we should. But if you actually want to care about Batman again, I have a recommendation. Hulu has a documentary called Batman and Bill. Everybody thinks that Bob Kane created Batman. No. That is not the whole truth. So this documentary that came out recently goes into the history of Batman and shows how Bob did not do it alone, that he had a partner, Bill Finger, who was a co-creator, and how for, God only knows, it was 70 years, he fought for the credit he deserved as co-creator. It's worth it. Don't do what I said earlier. Don't go back and watch Batman 89. Instead, go watch Hulu's Batman and Bill. You'll feel better at the end.
Well, also, wasn't Bob Kane kind of a dick on set? Like, Bob Kane makes a...
Kind of a dick?
Yeah, he makes a cameo when he gives Robert Wool the picture, but he was a huge, giant jerk to Tim Burton and to the producers of this movie, correct?
He's a jerk to everyone. When you watch this, you're going to have nothing but disdain for the man, and you'll be glad that he's gone.
Now, guys, I know we've had a little bit of trace decay with this movie. From what I remember, Batman Returns is the far superior movie, correct?
Yeah, Batman Returns with Danny DeVito as the Penguin is a far superior movie. I also want to point out just one quick mistake that I made. Batman Year 2 was not written by Frank Miller. I got it right in front of me here. It was written by Mike Barr, which would explain why it's a total turd. I have my copy right here with an inscription or an autograph on the inside that says, the worst comic ever, signed by Shat.
Yeah, I have to tend to believe, and this is, unfortunately, we couldn't raise our hands or be heard in that DC versus Marvel panel. But I was going to make the point that every second movie in Batman franchises tend to be the best, right? They seem to get it right the second time. Batman Returns, fantastic. The Dark Knight, fantastic. I assume the Batman, the standalone Batman film that they're making with Ben Affleck will probably be the penultimate Batman in that series as well.
It's not much of a bar to jump. I mean, I'm just saying.
That's true. Why did you say her name? Well, now's the time of the podcast where we break out our Shat meters and give you the number of wipes that this movie would take to get off your butts. If you've never listened to the podcast, 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's the Dark Knight of Batman films. It is a movie that cannot be eclipsed. 5 wipes is the Bob Kane. It's a giant asshole that just spews his filth and hate all over the place, and you can't stand him. And he's just terrible. So that's how this works. That being said, Big D, how many wipes would you give this movie?
I'm going to give it 3.75 wipes. There was way too many bad puns and jokes. They butchered so much of Batman canon. You have Batman and Joker sharing a love interest. What the fuck? But the worst thing about the 89 Batman film is that people seem to think it's good. And there's nothing worse than when a film is bad, but it's not recognized as bad, that people still think it's good. I want people to admit it. Let's have a group session. We'll hug it out and we can come to a new consensus that the movie is bad. I think Tim Burton did his best. And for that, that's the only reason I'm not giving it 4.5 wipes, is that he took it from a 60s campy, fun romp of a superhero and turned it into this. But it is nowhere near the masterpiece that we all seem to believe it is. And that sense of nostalgia needs to go away.
Gene, how many wipes would you give this movie?
For me, I'm going to go a little bit higher than that. I'm going to go with 3.5 wipes, and here's why. It's not a good movie by any means. They ruin Batman. The action sequences are dumb. He can't move his neck. There's a lot going wrong with this movie. But one thing that was great about this movie is that as photographs, as images, it really does work. There's a scene when the Joker is staring down the Batwing, and although he shoots it down with a giant gun, and that's stupid, when he's looking up and the lights are on him and the parade is going on behind him, it's great. I mean, it's just a beautiful shot. There are other shots, when Batman first appears and you see that gold emblem on his chest, and it's again very iconic. I love that scene. Some of the shots of Gotham I really loved. So it's a pretty movie. It just doesn't really work. I'm gonna go put 3.5 wipes. Also, there were a couple moments where I chuckled a little bit, so I think that's a fair assessment.
I mean, listen, I think we're all kind of on the same page here, but I'm going to be a little bit nicer than you guys were. I'm going to give it 3 wipes. I think it's an average movie. I think it's there's moments of greatness. I also like Michael Keaton's Batman, even though he is too short for the role. There's other better Batman films, though, and I think Batman Returns is far superior. So, Gene, that is what, 3.41 or 4.42 if you round up? Is that correct?
It's 3.42 if you round up, yep.
Got it. So, Big D, where does that put us on the pantheon of Shat movies?
God, this puts it at 22 out of 30. This is right in between The Lost Boys and Weird Science.
This movie is better than The Lost Boys, guys. This movie is so much better than The Lost Boys.
No.
Please. Bubble baths with Corey? Hell no. Do you
Dude,
remember the message that they were telling in Lost Boys?
Think about how fun it was to watch The Lost Boys, though. This was not a fun movie to watch.
You're right. It was probably a little bit longer. All right. Well, that being said, you can go to shatthemovies.com and see all the list right there in its full wonderfulness. Big D, what is the next movie that we will be reviewing?
Next week was a fan recommendation, the best of Steven Spielberg. So we had E.T. from 82, Hook from 91, Jurassic Park from 93, and the winner, the classic Raiders of the Lost Ark from 81 with 46%.
I really want to thank the listeners, honestly, for not going with the obvious one here, because too often I accuse you of doing that. And really, Raiders was kind of an underdog here. I think Jurassic Park and E.T. had the upper hand. E.T. finished dead last. I was kind of surprised by that. Raiders, I could see that, but I admittedly voted for Jurassic Park myself.
I saw more Indiana Joneses and more Lost Boys from Hook and Captain Hooks. At Phoenix Comic-Con. So I'm a little done with that. One of the best cosplays I saw was Chris Pratt's Velociraptor with cosplay. He had 3 like half-filled helium balloons that he would then set on the ground and kind of pause it. I really would have much rather watched Jurassic Park because, Gene, I know one of your favorite all-time movie characters is Ian Malcolm.
I mean, he's got everything I love. He's a scientist. He's mysterious. He wears all black. I mean, the scary thing with Ian Malcolm, though, is I went to a Jurassic Park party and dressed up like him, and people asked why I didn't have a costume. So that was a little unnerving.
Well, I'm going to say this to our listeners, okay? I'm not going to tell you the answer, and I don't want the person to say it, but one of your hosts actually went to the Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull premiere dressed as Indiana Jones and forced his roommate to go dressed as Short Round. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but next week I'm sure it'll come up.
Gene, we also do a segment where we give shout-outs to our listeners. What exactly is a shout-out, and how can our listeners get one?
Well, Raj, a shout-out is a little way to show that you support the podcast. So you go on shatthemovies.com, scroll down, and you'll see a little slide out that says get a shout-out. So you put your name in there, and we will read it on the air, I guess. So on the podcast this week, we have shout outs from Taz from Montana. And I'm not sure if it's colon or colon, but let's go with colon. Gaxar, Jacob K, Jenny Ferlika, and Gary. Jenny, I apologize if I fucked up your name. Anyway, those are the shout outs for this week. Thank you so much for listening and visiting shatthemovies.com to get your shout out. If you'd like a shout out, hop over to shatthemovies.com and get yours today.
That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're everywhere, including Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram. Just search for @ShatTheMovies. We are also on Facebook. Search for Shat the Movies Podcast. Our website, once again, where you can vote for upcoming movies and recommend them, is shatthemovies.com. That email address, again, is host@shatthemovies.com. We're everywhere fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by iTunes, be sure to leave a 5-star review. That really helps the podcast grow. You can also check out our sister podcast, Shout Out TV, where we review television series such as Westworld, Taboo, and American Gods. You can find all the information on our website over there at shatontv.com. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Gene Lyons, I'm Roger Roper. Be sure to join us next week for our Raiders of the Lost Ark review. Spoiler alert, 0 wipes. Thanks so much for listening. Take care, good night, and good luck.
But it was sweet when they killed Ellis.